Top 15 American wrestling legends of the 1970s, 1980s, who turned your living room into Madison Square Garden on a Saturday night. Hogan rips his shirt like a superhero. Savage flying like a madman. Piper talking trash with fire in his eyes. The 70s and 80s weren't just the birth of WWE, they were a full-blown revolution. Let's step back between those golden ropes, feel the roar of the crowd, and relive 15 wrestling legends who defined an era. And hey, maybe your personal hero made the list. Hulk Hogan. If you were around during the golden era of professional wrestling in the 1980s, chances are you remember the unmistakable presence of Hulk Hogan. With his handlebar mustache, yellow bandana, and 24-inch pythons, Hogan wasn't just a wrestler, he was a phenomenon. Born Terry Bollea in 1953, Hulk Hogan first emerged on the wrestling scene in the late 1970s. But it was during the early 80s that he truly changed everything. With his larger-than-life presence and all-American image, he became the face of the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, during its explosive rise into mainstream culture. Hogan didn't just become a superstar, he helped launch the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, into the global spotlight. Millions tuned in to hear him shout, "What you gonna do when Hulkamania runs wild on you?" And we believed every word. Hogan embodied more than just muscle and bravado. He stood for strength, optimism, and the classic battle of good versus evil. His legendary body slam of André the Giant at WrestleMania 3 in 1987 wasn't just a moment in sports. It was a cultural milestone for children and parents alike. Hogan was a larger-than-life hero who encouraged us to say our prayers, take our vitamins, and never give up. Beyond the ring, he was on lunchboxes, posters, and in the dreams of kids everywhere. On July 24th, 2025, we sadly said goodbye to this American icon. Hulk Hogan passed away at age 71, leaving behind not just a wrestling legacy, but a generation's worth of memories. For many, it marked the end of an era. While his later years came with ups and downs, his impact on popular culture and in the hearts of fans remains untouchable. The Iron Sheik, back when wrestling was raw, theatrical, and broadcast on weekend afternoons. One name stood out as a villain everyone loved to hate: the Iron Sheik. Born Hossein Khosrow, Ali Vaziri in 1942, he brought real physical power to the ring and served as a coach for the U.S. Olympic wrestling team. In 1983, the Iron Sheik shocked fans by defeating Bob Backlund to win the WWF Championship. Just weeks later, he became the launching pad for Hulk Hogan's meteoric rise. Although Hogan beat him for the title in early 1984, that match ignited Hulk fever and forever cemented Sheik as one of Hogan's most iconic early opponents. With his signature bowed boots, mustache, and commanding camel clutch, the Iron Sheik drew huge crowds and even bigger boos. But over time, fans grew to love him for his charisma, humor, and passion. He passed away in June 2023 at the age of 81, leaving behind a legacy of intensity, controversy, and unforgettable moments. Bob Backlund. Before the bright lights of WrestleMania and the larger-than-life personas of the late 80s, Bob Backlund was the face of professional wrestling. With his clean-cut image, technical skill, and unmatched conditioning, he served as WWF champion from 1978 to 1983, an incredible reign in any era. Backlund wasn't flashy. He didn't shout or wear outrageous costumes. He wrestled, and he did it with intensity, focus, and respect for the sport. Fans admired him for his integrity, humility, and relentless energy. In the ring, he was a machine, outlasting challengers with sheer stamina and skill. even after losing the title to the Iron Sheik in late 1983, a loss that paved the way for Hulk Hogan's rise. Backlund returned in the 90s with a surprising heel turn that introduced a new, eccentric side to his character. Bob Backlund remains a unique figure in wrestling history, a throwback to a time when hard work and honor defined a champion. André the Giant long before wrestling became mainstream entertainment. There was one man who could silence a crowd with just his presence, André the Giant. Standing at an astonishing 7 feet 4 inches, 2.24 meters, and weighing over 520 pounds, around 236 kilograms. André wasn't just a wrestler, he was a living legend. Born André René Roussimoff in France in 1946, he suffered from acromegaly, a condition that caused his body to grow at an extraordinary rate. But instead of hiding from the spotlight, André embraced it. By the 1970s and 80s, he had become a global icon in professional wrestling, appearing in rings around the world and eventually becoming a beloved fixture in the WWF, though his size made him nearly unbeatable. André often wrestled with grace and surprising agility for a man of his build. André passed away in 1993, but for those of us who watched him live, he remains larger than life, not just in stature, but in memory. Macho Man Randy Savage. If you watched wrestling in the 80s, you couldn't miss Macho Man Randy Savage, a superstar who was as intense as he was unforgettable. With his raspy voice, colorful robes, oversized sunglasses, and wild energy, Savage wasn't just a performer, he was a spectacle. Born Randy Poffo in 1952, he was a second-generation wrestler who carved out his own path with unmatched charisma and in-ring storytelling. His signature catchphrase, "Ooh yeah," became part of pop culture, and his flying elbow drop from the top rope thrilled audiences across the country. One of his greatest moments came at WrestleMania 3, where he battled Ricky the Dragon Steamboat in what many still call one of the best matches of all time. Randy Savage passed away in 2011 at the age of 58, but his legacy remains untouchable. For many of us who grew up in the golden era, the Macho Man wasn't just a wrestler, he was the madness, the magic, and the moment. Who's the wrestling legend that lives forever in your heart? Drop a comment and let's remember the golden days together. Dusty Rhodes. If Hulk Hogan was the superhero, then Dusty Rhodes was the heart. The American dream connected with fans not because he was perfect, but because he was real. With his southern drawl, polka dot gear, and heartfelt promos, Dusty spoke to the common man. He wasn't built like a Greek god, but his words could move crowds. His legendary Hard Times promo in 1985 captured the spirit of working-class America, whether battling Ric Flair or rallying underdogs in the NWA. Dusty always fought for dignity, pride, and the little guy, he held multiple world championships, but more than titles, he gave fans something to believe in. Dusty passed in 2015, but his influence lives on through his sons and every wrestler who dares to dream. Harley Race. Harley Race was everything wrestling used to be: tough, gritty, and no nonsense. Born in 1943, Race became one of the most respected NWA World Heavyweight Champions of all time, holding the title 8 times. He wasn't flashy. He didn't need gimmicks. Harley Race let his in-ring talent and legitimate toughness do the talking. His battles with Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, and Terry Funk weren't just matches. They were fights that felt real. Known as the King of Wrestling before the nickname was handed out like candy, Race commanded respect wherever he went. Even Vince McMahon called him the toughest man I've ever met in this business. Harley passed away in 2019 at the age of 76. For old-school fans, he remains a symbol of wrestling's raw, unscripted era when men bled, sweated, and earned every cheer. Roddy Piper. If you were a wrestling fan in the 1980s, Roddy Piper was impossible to ignore. Wild, unpredictable, and always one step ahead on the microphone. Piper was the kind of heel fans loved to hate. With his trademark kilt and bagpipe entrance, he brought a rebellious, chaotic energy to the WWF that changed wrestling forever. Piper wasn't about brute strength. He was about mind games, sharp wit, and pushing the boundaries. His interview segment, Piper's Pit, became legendary, and his feuds with Hulk Hogan, Jimmy Snuka, and Mr. T helped launch the first WrestleMania. Though he played the villain, many fans saw through the act and admired him for his intelligence, fearlessness, and raw charisma. He passed away in 2015 at the age of 61, and to this day, wrestling fans still echo his famous line, just when they think they got the answers. I change the questions. Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Back in the early 80s, before high-flying became common, Jimmy Superfly Snuka soared like no one else. With his wild hair, barefoot presence, and island swagger, Snuka brought a whole new style to the WWF. But it was his leap off the top of a steel cage at Madison Square Garden in 1983 that made him a legend. That moment, arms stretched wide, crashing down like a comet, left fans speechless and inspired a generation of future wrestlers, from Mick Foley to The Rock. Snuka didn't just wrestle, he flew. At a time when most stayed grounded, he became a fan favorite, not just for his athleticism, but for his intense presence and connection with the crowd. Though his later years were shadowed by controversy, his impact on wrestling's evolution is undeniable. Jimmy Snuka passed away in 2017 at the age of 73. But for many of us, that image of him standing barefoot on the top rope moments before taking flight is forever etched in memory. Hit that 1 in the comments if Jimmy Superfly Snuka was one of your favorites. Sergeant Slaughter. In the world of wrestling, few characters blended real-life patriotism with storytelling like Sergeant Slaughter. With his drill sergeant hat, dark sunglasses, and booming voice, he marched into the ring like he'd just stepped out of boot camp. Originally introduced in the early 80s as a tough-as-nails American hero, Slaughter became a symbol of national pride. His matches were more than entertainment. They felt like battles for the soul of America. Kids looked up to him like a G.I. Joe was brought to life, and sure enough, he even became one. In a bold and controversial twist during the Gulf War era, Slaughter turned heel as an Iraqi sympathizer, drawing massive heat but proving his ability to evolve and push boundaries. He eventually returned to his patriotic roots, and by the early 90s was beloved once again. Inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2004, Sergeant Slaughter remains a lasting icon. Ric Flair. If you were a wrestling fan in the late 70s and throughout the 80s, Ric Flair wasn't just a name you lived the woo. With his flowing blonde hair, sequined robes, and unmatched bravado, the Nature Boy embodied wrestling's glitz and glam like no one else. Born in 1949, Ric Flair became the face of the National Wrestling Alliance (NWA), holding the world title 16 times and engaging in legendary rivalries with Dusty Rhodes, Ricky Steamboat, and later even Hulk Hogan. He wasn't just entertaining, he was a master storyteller in the ring. Ric Flair wasn't about brute force, he was about style, psychology, and presence. Every entrance felt like a main event. Though he officially retired multiple times, Flair remained part of the wrestling world for decades, proof of his unmatched legacy. For those of us who grew up during the golden era, Ric Flair wasn't just a wrestler. He was the limousine-ridin, jet-flyin, kiss-stealin, wheelin' and dealin' icon of our Saturday nights. Bruno Sammartino. Long before wrestling was national or global, Bruno Sammartino was its king. Known as the living legend, he held the WWF, now WWE Championship, for an astounding 11 combined years, still the longest reign in history. Born in Italy in 1935 and a survivor of Nazi-occupied Europe, Bruno immigrated to America and built himself into a powerhouse. In the 1960s and 70s, he sold out Madison Square Garden a record number of times, becoming a hero to working-class fans, especially immigrants who saw themselves in his journey. His rivalries with the likes of superstar Billy Graham and Larry Zbyszko are still remembered for their drama and realism. He passed away in 2018 at the age of 82. To those who watched him live, Bruno wasn't just a wrestler. He was a symbol of resilience, loyalty, and true greatness in the ring. Jake, the Snake Roberts. In an era of loud voices and larger-than-life characters, Jake the Snake Roberts stood out by doing the opposite. He spoke softly and carried a snake. With his slow, deliberate promos and piercing gaze, Jake didn't need to yell to terrify his opponents or captivate the audience. He brought psychology into wrestling like few ever had. Every word felt personal, every movement calculated, and then, of course, there was Damien, the python he carried in a canvas sack, ready to be draped over a fallen rival after the dreaded DDT. His devastating finishing move, unforgettable presence, made him one of the most iconic figures of the 80s. Though his real-life struggles with addiction were well documented, Jake's journey of recovery has been equally powerful. Today, he's remembered not just for the snake, but for the shadows he brought into wrestling and the strength it took to emerge from them. Tito Santana. In the flashy world of 1980s wrestling, Tito Santana stood out for his class, consistency, and pure athleticism. A former teacher turned wrestler, Santana was one of the most respected babyfaces, good guys of his era, known for his resilience and fighting spirit. Tito was a two-time Intercontinental Champion and a tag team champion, and he was often the dependable performer who could light up a crowd no matter where he was on the card. As one of the first Latino stars to make it big in the WWF, Tito was a trailblazer. His signature battle cry, Arriba, and flying forearm smash became staples of Saturday morning wrestling for a generation of fans. He was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2004. To this day, Tito Santana is remembered as a workhorse, a role model, and a quiet legend of the golden era. They were more than just wrestlers. They were a part of our lives, our Saturdays, our childhood memories. If this trip down memory lane brought back even one unforgettable moment, don't let it end here. Let us know in the comments who was your ultimate wrestling legend, and if this video brought back even a spark of nostalgia, give it a like, share it with an old friend, and don't forget to subscribe for more walks down memory lane.